Hello, welcome to Papa Nick's Music. I am, as always, your host, Papa Nick Lewis, and today we are talking Yacht Rock. Um, Several weeks ago, I lost track of exactly how long ago it was. Doesn't really matter. Several weeks ago, Rick Beato, yes, Rick Beato again. Rick Beato posted a video in which he explained why he was never going to use the label Yacht Rock on his channel again. And this was in response to a documentary that is available, HBO Max, wherever you stream your HBO product, called Yacht Rock, a documentary, D-O-C-K, documentary. Very clever. And he watched that documentary and came away from the documentary full of ire and spittle, and posted a video in which he explained why he thought the Yacht Rock label was bullshit and he was never going to use it again once he was done with the video. Now, I don't want to be the guy who makes his living sitting around debunking or arguing with Rick Beato. But we got problems here. One of the problems I have with Rick Beato, I've talked about Rick Beato before. If you're not familiar with him, if you are one of my viewers who tune in because you know me, you're not watching this because you're interested in music discussion videos. Rick Beato is the 600-pound gorillas of music YouTubers, right? He's very popular. He's got millions of subscribers, and his videos get millions of views. He does a variety of different types of videos. The ones that I like of his are What Makes This Song Great, where he goes through, he'll pick a hit song, and he'll go through it, play a little bit of it, and then talk about the composition and the performance and all that kind of stuff. And it's enlightening. He obviously knows what he's talking about, right? But every once in a while he goes off on a tear about something that he doesn't like and comes across as old man yelling at clouds. And I've talked about that before. So like I said, I don't want to spend my time sitting here punching up at Rick Beato. I don't want to have the channel that is dependent on, making fun of somebody else or picking nits with somebody else or anything like that. But every once in a while he'll say something that I do think is worth talking about. And here we've got one where he talks about Yacht Rock. In his video, he says that he believes that the label Yacht Rock is derogatory, although he never explains why. He says that one of the problems he has with the Yacht Rock label is that Yacht Rock is soft rock, and much of the music that is contained under that umbrella label is not really soft rock. He says that the people who record the music, many of whom are people he's interviewed, many of whom are people that he thinks of as friends. He's not above a little name dropping now and then. But the people who recorded the music don't like the term. So he says he will never again use the label. It's a bullshit label. He doesn't like it. But, excuse me, first, he says repeatedly that Yacht Rock is derogatory, but he never explains why. He never explains what it is about the label that he finds derogatory. The closest he comes is saying that I like a lot of this music, but I don't own a yacht, which is so completely beside the point it's not even funny. And thinking that it's derogatory because the people who make the music don't like the label. But that doesn't explain why it's derogatory, right? So just repeating something is not the same as proving it, which a clever commenter is already down below typing in a comment accusing me of the same thing. He says that the music that is under this umbrella isn't really soft rock, and he uses his examples of Toto and Christopher Cross. He says Toto isn't soft rock because Steve Lukather plays a smoking solo at the end of Rosanna. And it's like, yeah, that's a smoking solo, but Rosanna is soft rock. Christopher Cross is like the poster child of soft rock. And yeah, he does a wicked solo at the end of Ride Like the Wind. The man is a fantastic guitarist, but his music is soft rock. And then finally, like I said, he talks about how the artists who recorded the music that is lumped under the label Yacht Rock don't like the label. And this is fairly common. A lot of artists don't like their work being categorized in any way. Anytime I come across this, I'm always reminded of Michael Nesmith, who in interview after interview after interview would get a little on the surly side anytime anybody asked him about being one of the progenitors of country rock. He didn't like that. He didn't like being put into the category of country rock. No, he would say in interviews. That's not what I was trying to do. I was just trying to write music that spoke to me in an honest and direct way, and that just happened to be country-esque music. And I understand that a lot of artists don't like being labeled. They don't like being categorized. The very act of putting a label on something, putting something into a category, gives it limits. It gives it boundaries, and they don't like that. They prefer being boundary free, which I completely understand. But I would say that all of this discussion is beside the point. And the real reason I'm making the video today is not to argue with Rick Beato. If Rick Beato doesn't like the label Yacht Rock, and if he's never going to use the label Yacht Rock again because he thinks Yacht Rock is a derogatory label, fine. That's perfectly okay. That he's well within his rights to do that. I've got no issue with that. I personally like Yacht Rock. I like the music, and I've got no problem with the label. It's a handy label that describes, or that refers to, I should say, a style of music recording that was popular in the late 70s and early 80s that distinguishes that music from other popular trends at the time. I'm thinking things like disco, punk, new wave, right? There were a lot of different types of pop music in the late 70s up through the early 80s. And Yacht Rock is one of them. I like Yacht Rock. I like listening to Yacht Rock. I like the Sirius XM Yacht Rock channel, although I disagree with some of their programming. They have a wider definition of yacht rock than I would use. They play a lot of Orleans, and I think that's arguable. They play a lot of bands like Firefall and Poco that are definitely not yacht rock. But still, I like the label. I like using the label. And I think the important point here is that when we talk about categorizing stuff, when we talk about labeling stuff, we're not talking about what the artist's intent is or anything like that. The labels are an audience tool, not an artist's tool, right? If I label music, if I categorize music, I am doing so in a way that is attempting to make some sense about sense of my musical taste in general. I'm trying to make some sense of what I think is good, what I think is less good, what the characteristics are of music that I like, right? If I'm using labels like yacht rock or new wave or power pop or whatever the label is, it is an attempt for me to identify a type of music that I can then talk about in such a way that you'll know kind of what I'm talking about, right? This is akin to the if you liked this, you may like this element that most online retailers have, right? It's If you like this book, you will like this other series, that kiosk that you might see in a bookstore, right? It's the attempt to draw connections between different art forms, different works, in an attempt to uh, increase awareness of those art forms. And I'm not the only one who thinks this way. Um, Donald Fagen thinks this way, if we read between the lines. One of the things that Beato points out in his video is that Donald Fagen famously hates the term yacht rock. He hates that label. And the makers of the documentary included in the documentary a very brief phone conversation that the director had with Fagen. The director called Fagen up and was trying to get permission to use some of Steely Dan's music in the documentary. He identified himself as the director of this Yacht Rock movie, and he wanted to use some Steely Dan music. And Fagen replied with, "What did you say this? What genre are you talking about?" And the director said, "Yacht Rock." And Fagen says, and I'm roughly paraphrasing here, "Yacht Rock. Oh yeah, okay. Well here, you can go fuck yourself." And then he hangs up. And this very brief phone conversation is included in the movie. And it turns out, reportedly, I don't know this firsthand, but I have read about it, and it turns out that Fagen allowed the movie makers, allowed the director to use all of the Steely Dan music that he wanted to use, right? The guy had put in like snips from, I think, 6 different songs. He was hoping he could get 1 or 2 of them approved. Fagen went ahead and approved all 6 of them. The only condition he gave was that they had to include that phone conversation. Now, let's think about this for a second. If Fagen truly despises the label Yacht Rock, if he thinks it is a negative, it's misleading, it's meaningless, he's not going to give permission for the director to use Steely Dan's music. He's certainly not going to say, "Sure, you can use all of it as long as you include this phone call," right? By allowing his music to be used in the movie, as long as they also included his phone call, what he's doing is he's lodging his protest. He's making it clear he doesn't like the label, but he's also taking advantage of it, right? He's taking advantage of this label. He's taking advantage of this categorization. He's taking advantage of this movie that will help spread awareness of Steely Dan's music. And that is going to be a benefit to him. He knows that if there is a movie out there about yacht rock that primarily focuses on, or that focuses a large amount of its attention on Steely Dan, that Steely Dan will benefit from that. Either that or he's a complete hypocrite, which is entirely possible. But I think, no. He wanted his music included in the movie, and he wanted to keep his reputation as a curmudgeon intact. Fagen himself sees the value of the label. The label Yacht Rock is a marketing tool that he is now taking advantage of to help promote Steely Dan's music. Beato doesn't like the label. I would argue because Rick Beato is a gatekeeper. He always sides with the gatekeepers. He laments the good old days when music was controlled, with an iron fist by major record labels. He tends to side with the gatekeepers. He tends to want to use the language, if he's talking about music, he wants to use the language that's been pre-approved by the appropriate taste makers. I, on the other hand, do not side with the gatekeepers. I don't care what critics say. I don't care whether a given artist agrees with my take on that artist's work. Whether the label Yacht Rock is appropriate or not, I would argue is solely up to us, the audience. If you like the label, use it. If you don't, don't. This is why I'm saying I've got no problem with Rick Beato thinking it's a bullshit label and deciding he's never going to use the phrase again on his channel. Perfectly fine. Well within his rights to do that. That is not in any way, triggering any sort of reaction on my part. What is triggering the reaction on my part is If you like the label, use it. If you don't. Either way, though, let's stop pretending that there's some sort of legitimacy involved here. Remember, this is all subjective, right? Every video I do, it seems, I'm talking about subjectivity. I'm talking about how the aesthetic experience is an individual, inherently subjective experience. There's no such thing as objectively good or objectively bad art. There is only art that I like and art that I do not. And as long as we keep that in mind, this is a wonderful conversation. It's happy and sunshine and everything that's ponies and buttercups. Everything goes down the shit chute really quickly, though, as soon as somebody in the conversation insists on being seen as objectively right. And Rick Beato is one of those who sees himself as objectively right. This is not an objective situation. This is very much a subjective situation. And it is a subjective situation that is driven by and for the benefit of the audience, not the maker of the artwork. So, I'm still going to use the label Yacht Rock. I think it's a handy label and I like it. Just like I'm going to use labels like Power Pop and New Wave. They're meaningful to me in a way that allows me to talk about music that I like. And I'm developing less and less patience as I get older for people who would tell me that that's not a good thing to do because somebody who is better than you thinks it's a bad idea. Yeah. No, thank you. But that's what I'm thinking about this week. Hodgepodge of a discussion as it is. What do you think? Am I on the right track? Am I off the beaten path? Drop that comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. I always love hearing from you, but this week I am really interested to find out if I'm a voice in the wilderness or not. If you enjoyed the video, I appreciate that. I'd appreciate it if you go down and click the like button. If you do click the like button, go ahead and click that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, but it means the world to me, so I very much appreciate it. If you do subscribe, click the bell for notifications. The YouTube folks appreciate that, so on their behalf, I thank you. Thanks again for hanging out with me today, and I hope that the rest of your day is uneventful. See you soon.